Hello, bonsoir, Annie. Welcome to this Science North virtual star party. My name is Oletha. I am the staff scientist for Spaceplace and the planetarium. And I am very happy and excited to be joined by Tasha Beads. Tasha is a water walker, and she will be sharing her upcoming water walk for Junction Creek with us, as well as a connection between water and the night sky. Sarah will also be joining us. Sarah is one of our Anishinaabe staff. She is a science demonstrator for the planetarium, Spaceplace, and our special exhibit, Indigenous Ingenuity. Sarah will be giving us a night sky tour of the Anishinaabe spring constellations. She will be joined by Lucy, who is the science communicator for the planetarium. So we are streaming to you this evening from Sudbury in Swakamuck. We are on the traditional and ancestral territory of the Atikameksheng, Anishinaabe, and Wanapitei First Nation. This land lies in the Robertson-Huron Treaty area. If you are joining us live, please share your location with us and your comments and questions throughout the presentation and night sky tour. Let's hear from Tasha.
Ani bojo everyone. Gapemote eski esqueo nadijna kazni onako nindonchaba makwando dem nij medekwe. I introduced myself to the language in the language of the territory that we're situated in here at Science North, and that's the territory of the Anishinaabe. And I'm a water walker. And so that means that I enter into ceremony for different bodies of water to raise consciousness about the need to protect the water and to keep it safe for the future generations. And not only that, but for all of life, since whatever we put in the water actually circles back to us. We're all connected. And that's one of the things that the stories that you're going to hear tonight speak about. It speaks about how all of creation has various connections, and we as human beings are a part of that creation. We're not above it. We're not below it. We're in it all as an equal element to it as humans. And so the water that I'm going to be walking for, as soon as it's safe to do so with COVID, is called Junction Creek, and it runs from Garson all the way to a place called Spanish. It's 135 kilometers, and I will be walking with a core group of walkers. And we walk every day. It'll be about approximately 30 kilometers per day until 30 kilometers per day, give or take a few. It should take us approximately 4 days, and we'll be ending at a very significant site. The Junction Creek itself is actually connected to the Great Lakes. And so everything that goes into Junction Creek eventually enters the Great Lakes. So if any of you are from Swakamuck, one of the things you know is the amount of garbage in Junction Creek. And so that's one of the things that we're trying to raise awareness about, is the need to make sure when we walk outside that we look around us. And if it's safe to do so, if you're a young person or a child, you make sure there's an adult with you and you go take a look. Is there garbage, or are you creating garbage? And if you are, is there a way that you can reduce that? Is there a way that you can kind of help the earth and help the waters? The person that the being that you're going to hear about tonight is someone called Mishabiju. Mishabiju is one of the oldest beings that the Anishinaabe speak about. In fact, he's known across Turtle Island, but specifically for the Great Lakes region. His connection is to that of copper. And when we are walking for the water, that's one of the things we use. We use a copper vessel, and that's in recognition, again, of those inherent connections between us as humans and all of creation. If you know anything about science, you know that if you put water inside of copper, the copper actually helps to clean that water. They work together. And so in Anishinaabe thought and traditions, that copper is very, very significant. And Mishibishu in our stories is one of the entities who cares for that copper. And for us as Anishinaabe, as Indigenous people, these beings that we talk about are have existed and still do exist, and we trace that back through something called oral histories, right? And our stories are actually written in the sky. You'll see that tonight, and in the landscape. So, we can go to certain places in our traditional territories, and that's basically all of Turtle Island. Our creation stories tell us that we're made from the earth and we come from the stars. So there's lots to learn, but that's just a little bit of information. Mishibishu is the water panther. And so he's a very, 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 very powerful being. And it's said in those stories that he's the keeper of the copper. He exists, he and she and they exist within the deep water of the Great Lakes. And we've had stories about that being for thousands and thousands of years, and we still carry those stories forward. And so the story that you'll hear and that you'll see him written into the sky. So there's an inherent connection between the water that we see on Earth, and of course the sky realm or the star world, right? So there's all these different connections, and that's something that you can learn about as you move forward. If you're Anishinaabe or Indigenous, right? Take the time, take the opportunity to go and listen to your elders, to your old people, go into your lodges. The water walks emerge from something called the Medallion Lodge. And so, you can go into that, into these different societies. And that's where we learn who we are. That's where we learn the extensive stories that have been carried forward for us by our respective ancestors. So I hope that you can follow us. We're actually having a talk on this Thursday. This Thursday coming on May 13th, we're going to hear from two youth water walkers. One is someone by the name of Florence Ozwamik. She's been walking since she was 2 years old. And another person we're hearing from is Andrew Mandaman. He is Josephine Ba Mandaman's husband. She passed away a few years ago, but he's still here with us, and he's going to share some stories about carrying the water staff. And then we have Shirley Williams, another elder. And then we have someone by the name of Miigwants. And Miigwants is from the Deaf Nation. And so Miigwants is also a water staff carrier. When we walk with the water, we have the water staff and we have the copper vessel. And so there's roles there that we follow and protocols that we follow while we're carrying that water. And so Miigwants, even though he's a member of the Deaf Nation, he has participated in water walks for 10 years. So we're very, very inclusive. Anybody and everybody can walk for the water. And so Miigwants is going to share his story through an ASL interpreter. So we hope to see you. There's going to be a link shared in the chat room. Feel free to pre-register for the event on Thursday. And you can also follow us on our social media. And once we have the go-ahead to do so from public health and our elders, when we make sure that it's safe enough, we will be walking from Garson to Junction Creek. That's the first water walk. And the second water walk is actually bigger. It's a national one. And I will be walking from the headwaters of the Saskatchewan River in Alberta all the way to Manitoba. That one will take me 1,900 kilometers. So something like 75 days to walk. So I hope to see you. If you have any questions, I'm going to stick around today so you can ask a little bit later, or you can pop them into the chat. Chimigwech, Kananaskompton, everyone, and I will talk to you later. Enjoy the show.
Chimigwech, Tasha, thank you so much for sharing that with us here this evening. And now let's head over to the night sky and see Mishibishu there. Take it away, Sarah.
Looking into the nature, and during the spring here, we can see Mitsubishi. or the Great Panther, which we just learned about. Mishibishi is a spirit who lives in the deep parts of lakes and rivers and is known to bring storms and floods and can even cause people to drown. The tail of Mishibishi overlaps with Leo, the lion. And this is why Mishibishi is sometimes given the nickname curly tail, because of its curly tail. The head of our great underwater cat spirit overlaps with the head of Hydra the water snake. The constellation of Mishibishi reminds the people that they are in a time of flooding and thin ice, and to be careful when crossing lakes and rivers. The Great Panther also signaled a time to move from a winter camp to a sugar bush or a spring camp. In the late spring, we're able to see the western constellation of Corona Borealis, or the Northern Crown. I'll bring them up there. Corona Borealis shares its stars with the Anishinaabe constellation as well, known as Marudiswan, or the Sweat Lodge. Here, just beside the Sweat Lodge, we can see another Anishinaabe constellation known as Nundashinbe Madazid, or the Exhausted Bather, but we'll focus on that one on a different star party. For now, the Sweat Lodge is a purification ceremony. Very hot rocks are brought into a small lodge, and water is poured over them to create steam. The ceremony is all about returning to the womb and remembering, as well as renewing someone's spirit. The constellation itself reminds the people that they are made of body, mind, heart, and spirit. We'll turn to the northern sky now. In the north, we can see these constellations all year round. As we get here, does anyone remember this western constellation here? This is Ursa Major, or the Big Bear, and it has an asterism in it called the Big Dipper. An asterism is simply a recognizable pattern of stars that's part of one or more constellations, but is not actually recognized as a constellation. We can also see Ojik or Fisher here, which is the Anishinaabe constellation. That shares its stars with Ursa Major, or the Big Bear. Fisher released the birds in spring from Skyland. He's a pretty clever animal, the only one who could easily defeat Porcupine. Fisher is always on the move, often building new homes as he travels. And the constellation of Fisher is also on the move in the night sky as he circles the North Star each night. If we look more closely into our night sky, we might be able to see the North Star. Here we can see the North Star right on the back of a constellation called Mong, or Loon. The tip of the tail of Loon here is also the tip of the tail of the Little Dipper, or Ursa Minor, the Little Bear. Loon is one of the Anishinaabe clans and is recognized as an important messenger and leader. Loon has a pattern of white spots and a black background, much like the stars that we can see in the night sky. Loon's call has an unearthly quality, and it always stays close to the water. And just like we heard earlier, water reflects the night sky and is kind of like a doorway between the sky above and the earth below, so we see a connection between the sky and the water again. And Loon here is kind of seen as a doorkeeper. Thank you, Miigwech, to the people who shared these stories with us, and to you guys for being here to listen to them today.
Thank you, Sarah Miigwech. And I would just like to let people know that the stories, the artwork, and the constellations that we just shared through Stellarium come from this Ojibwe Sky Star Map Constellation Guide. This is written by Annette Lee, William Wilson, Jeffrey Tibbetts, and Carl Gawboy. They are part of the Native Skywatchers. Definitely check them out. We are putting a link in the description for the Native Skywatchers. They do a lot of really amazing work. They have great videos and resources. And they've actually partnered with NASA on a project called Two-Eyed Seeing. So some really exciting and interesting work. Okay, so heading over to our comments, I see Monique Ross is saying hello from Dunville. Hello, Monique. Welcome. And we also have Juan Pablo saying hello. Carrie McIntyre is here as well. And Margaret Hoare is giving a miigwech to Tasha, which is great. Juanita Ashton recognized the Big Dipper, so that's great. And we do have a question here. And this one, I think this might be for Tasha. Oh, hi, me too. But how old do you estimate the constellations have been recognized by Anishinaabe? So how long do you think?
I would say since the beginning of time, because our creation stories are connected to the star world and the constellations. So for as long as we have told stories, we have had stories about the stars, and they're connected to the way that we come into the world. So forever.
Forever. We came from the stars. We are star stuff. And we've got Lily Parati asking, how does the star world connect to the land and waters? Is that something you want to speak to a bit more?
Yeah, I can speak to it a little bit. The stars and the land, well, they're traditionally across indigenous, sorry, my granddaughter's here too. Traditionally across indigenous nations, we have used stars to help map, right? We've always utilized the stars to help map our directions, to help map our locations. We've got certain stories that are affiliated. You heard a little bit of them today. Certain stories are affiliated with the stars' positioning. We have always made that connection. Creating our calendar through the stars and through the season, through the sun and the moon. And so we've always had those inherent connections. And again, our creation stories tell us that we come from the stars. So Chimiigwech.
And you mentioned the moon in terms of the calendar. Would you be willing to talk a little bit about the 13 months?
I can talk a tiny bit about it. It's not actually one of my areas. Like others, we all have different areas of specialty, I suppose. My specialty is the water. But of course, in the Anishinaabe and various indigenous nations, we go by 13 moons instead of the calendar year that you might be used to. Traditionally, we would connect to Grandmother Moon in our cycles as Anishinaabe Kwe or women. We would also connect to the turtle, right? If you look at the turtle's back, there's actually 13 segments, and so that connects to the moon and the cycles as well. Okay.
Wouldn't that be nice as women to just like have your cycle kind of fall at a similar time, like to be more? I don't know. It would be nice. It's like a different time every month because the months are kind of out of sync with the moons now, but we're in sync with the moons. So
yes, in our traditional teaching, the moon is conceptualized as a feminine energy, and so the moon is conceptualized as a grandmother. The water is also conceptualized as a feminine energy, as is. So the water and the moon, and there's a story about that connection. And there's also a story about the sun. The sun is, again, conceptualized as a masculine energy, as is the fire. So there's always that balance. We also recognize the gender fluidity as well in our traditional stories.
Excellent. So heading back to the comments, just want to say hello to Kayla McKay, Zayden, Mackenzie, and Elizabeth in Levesque. So happy you could be here. Very excited. And we're getting lots more thanks, which is really nice. Okay, so let's head back to Stellarium for a little bit and see some more night sky. And maybe another sort of feminine connection, we could take a look at Venus, which is also known as Ekwe Anang, or the woman's star.
Yes. So today and this week, we're actually using the Stellarium program. It's a free downloadable version of Stellarium. And I end up using this because it does have a bunch of different constellations from different cultures. So here we're looking towards the western sky, west northwest, and right after the sun sets. So Venus, we can see Venus either really like early in the morning or in the evening, depending where it's at on which side of the sun it would be. It's closer to the sun than us, so we would have to find it either towards the east or towards the west. Right now, it sets right after the sun sets. It's not very far off from the sun. So if you want to take a look at it, for example, tonight or within the next week or so, we'll have to be outside right after the sun setting. So here I'm going to kind of go backwards in time. And at around 9 o'clock, let's go back maybe just before 9. We'll be able to see it, but in this version here, the tree happens to be right in front of it. So I'll take away the landscape and we can see Venus right here. We can in fact see Mercury not too far off. So if you pay very close attention, you might be able to see that teeny tiny dot that makes up Mercury. It's easier with a pair of binoculars or a telescope, but we should still be able to see it with the naked eye if it's clear enough and there's no buildings in the way. But we'll also get to see Venus, which is very nice to see. Venus is very bright, so it's an easier one to see. Was there anything you wanted to add, Olathe? We can't hear you.
Sorry, I had to type for a second. I don't want to, yes, that again. Thank you. So just a shout out to Lauren Markowitz joining us from the Waskesiu Lake in Saskatchewan in Treaty 6 territory. So, hey, Lauren. And we also had a request for the title of the book, this Ojibwe Sky Star Map, to be posted. So we've posted that in the comments. And
oh yes, and if anyone would like to download the Stellarium version, it is also in the description of the video.
Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely. We have a nice comment from Errol, just absolutely lovely, the indigeneity that Science North is bringing in. And on that note, Indigenous Ingenuity, a spot you eventually might be able to meet Sarah in. She'll be working in that special exhibit. We do have a sneak peek tour of that exhibit that will be online this Thursday. So that will be 10 a.m. in English and 1 p.m. in French. And it's a premiere, but Matt, who is the staff scientist for Indigenous Ingenuity, will be available in the chat. So if you like this content, you want to engage some more and learn some more about all of Canada's Indigenous folk, then definitely check that out. All right. How about, is there another planet we can see in the night sky tonight, Lucy?
Yes, we can. We can, in fact, still see Mars in the night sky. So still looking towards the west, we can still see Mars once it gets dark enough out. So a bit closer towards 9:30, 10 o'clock. It'll be nice and dark to see a lot of stars. Again, as long as there's no clouds in the way and you're far enough away from any big cities or there's a lot of light pollution, we'll get to see Mars. It's in fact really close to a constellation that has these two bright stars up here. And by connecting the stars together and using lots of imagination, we can find Gemini the twins. They have a bright star each for their head. One star is Pollux, the other one's Castor, so it's the names of the two twins. But we can see Mars in that constellation. If anyone's seen our previous virtual star parties, you might have noticed that Mars has been slowly moving across the sky. It's nothing that you can really see a difference just from within a night or a few nights, but week after week, you'll notice a difference where it's moved and it's at a different position. So in a week, it'll be even further up towards inside of the constellation of Gemini as it continues along its orbit around the sun.
That is pretty cool. Oh, and we are joined by Linda this evening from the Royal Astronomical Society of Canada, Sudbury Centre. Hi, Linda. Welcome. Thanks for being here. And she just let us know that RASC does actually have a planisphere. So sort of it's like a little disc of paper set in an envelope of paper that you can sort of turn and see the constellations that are up in the night sky. So instead of printing off a sky map every month, you can have one that you can adjust for the month that you're in. And Rask does have one that shows the Ojibwe or Anishinaabe star groupings. So that's pretty cool. Thanks for that. All right, so now the night sky is yours. Is there anything anyone out there would like to see or hear about in the night sky, or any just questions you might have for any of us here? We're all here to answer your questions.
Yes, if anyone has any more comments, please let us know. In the meantime, let's view a few of the spring constellations. So we have mentioned a few of the Anishinaabe constellation and just pretty much said a few of the what it corresponds with the Western constellations. So if we remember, we do have up here this kind of like reverse question mark, and back here would be the tail of Leo the lion, and we have the head and the body of Hydra, type of giant sea serpent in Greek mythology. But if we head over to our Anishinaabe constellation, just as a quick review,
And you're
we'll
also learning here, guys, how to toggle between those different cultures as well. So it's kind of neat just to see that these stars are something that we all share, right? And all people looked up and sort of laid their stories onto these stars.
exactly. So we've got Mishpiji, and going back to the Western constellations, there's a few other ones that we can see that has some decently bright stars. I find it so much easier to start with the brighter stars and star hop from there. So let's head back over towards the north. A good star hopping thing you can do. If anyone's been here in the past virtual star parties, you'll recognize this one. If we go to the Big Dipper, part of Ursa Major, the Big Bear. So we've got the bear here with a really, really long tail. And this portion here with the pot area and the handle would be the Big Dipper, as we saw a little earlier. And by taking the handle of the dipper or the tail of the bear, we can arc to Arcturus. It's a really fairly bright star, so the star is really easy to find. And it is part of a constellation known as Bootes, or the herdsman. And from there, we can spike over to Spica, which is part of Virgo the Maiden. So we do have some zodiac signs. The zodiac signs are along the imaginary line through the sky, known as the ecliptic, where the sun's traveling through. So we do have.
Lucy, now that we're on the zodiac signs, we have to show the zodiac signs to our viewers who are asking for them. Is that okay if we take a deep dive into zodiac signs?
Let's.
Okay. August Ashton would really like to see Aquarius.
Aquarius, wonderful. Yeah, Aquarius, we can't see just yet in the evening, like at around we're close to 10 o'clock at night. We don't get to see it just then. To see Aquarius right now, we have to be up really early in the morning. Or if you wait a few months, you'll get to see it earlier and earlier. But right now, just to show everyone who's watching, we have Taurus just about setting with Mercury in Taurus right now. We've got Gemini the twins, as we mentioned, Cancer the crab, that has no bright stars, very hard to find. Leo the lion, Virgo the maiden, and we're starting to see Libra the scales. Now, if we fast forward, we'll get to see a few more constellation. So all I did was just clicking a few times on the fast forward button, and it'll fast forward the whole night sky through time. So we do have Scorpius rising up, followed by Sagittarius, half man, half horse, a centaur with his bow and arrow, followed by Capricorn and Aquarius. So we can also see a few more planets at this point. Saturn and Jupiter are fairly close together. This is the third spring, I'm pretty sure that we get to see Saturn and Jupiter fairly close, but at this point, Jupiter has passed Saturn, and they're slowly getting further and further away from each other. Jupiter is closer to the sun than Saturn, so it orbits around the sun quite a bit faster. So it'll start kind of drifting apart. Very, very slowly, though. It's not something that we can see one night after another. It's something that we only notice after many weeks or months of looking at the night sky. So Saturn is in Capricorn, and Jupiter happens to be right now in Aquarius. But as we can see, we're near 4:30 in the morning. So if you really want to see Aquarius right now, you have to be up really early.
Right. And at the same time, we have someone else asking about Taurus,
Yes.
through McIntyre. And so we did see Taurus there briefly, but it looks like you need to get out pretty early in the evening to see Taurus.
Exactly. You have to be out really early, right as the sun's setting. But even then, if we first, I'll just make sure that we're facing the right direction. Let's head over towards the
Now,
the
we're
west.
also getting a lot more questions about Anishinaabe astronomy. And so I'm thinking we're going to have to get someone on here who they're all about it.
Yes.
But Tasha, if you
Yeah,
have,
actually
yeah.
can. We do recognize the planets. That's also in our creation story. I don't carry those stories, and we wouldn't be able to get into them tonight. But we do have, again, stories for each planet. We also recognize the eclipse. That's been told to us. There's been various different observations about the eclipse within Indigenous oral traditions. And again, it's going to vary from nation to nation. One thing to be aware and conscious is that we're very distinct, right? So I'm actually Plains Cree as well. But I've been living in the territory of the Anishinaabe for the last 10 years, and I'm something called Medallion. So the Medallion Lodge is equivalent to our own kind of interdisciplinary institute, if you will. And so within that particular spiritual tradition, we learn about all of these stories. It's like our own university. And we've been handed some of these stories through something called the Sand Scrolls. And so that's only for Medallion people to learn, but we do readily share some of the information, not all of it, but some of it. And so with the eclipses, one of the things that I've been told throughout, both from a Cree perspective and from Anishinaabe perspectives, is that we don't look, that's a very private moment in creation. And so instead of so it's kind of interesting when you think about it from a kind of a physical perspective, because we're often warned not to look, right? With the sun, those in the 60s and 70s, they had those glasses. And I think for Indigenous people, it was a special sacred time. And again, those stories are going to vary from nation to nation, but we do have them. I don't know about the zodiac line. We have different names. Oleth and I in Science North, and at one point the Indigenous Studies Department, which is anyway, we won't go there. But at one point we did have a partnership, and so there are elders and there are knowledge carriers of star knowledge carriers. So I would love to facilitate an evening event again. The last time we partnered, we brought in those storytellers, and they were able to match what we saw on the screen. They came in the evening and then they shared those stories. So, perhaps there's something again that we can do that partnership again in the future. Yeah,
I would love that. Once we can meet in person, and definitely we've got some funding through Indigenous Ingenuities, so we hope.
Well, even through Zoom, some of our elders are quite well versed with Zoom, as you'll see come Thursday if you join us Thursday evening. A lot of our elders have, again, Indigenous people are really resilient and adaptive, and so a lot of them are open to Zoom teachings. There's been a couple of star teachings through Zoom. So yeah, follow us on Facebook too, and we'll start to ensure and encourage that sharing as well.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thanks.
I really, I love what you're saying just about the diversity. And that's something when Sarah and I were talking, preparing, I was asking her about Indigenous Ingenuity because she's had a chance to be trained on the exhibit and to tour it. And actually, Sarah, do you want to just talk about it a bit?
Yeah, absolutely. Indigenous Ingenuities, super cool exhibit. Both things where you get to sit down and hear from elders and from other people, as well as interactive things like playing games, learning through actually physically doing things. It goes through the different seasons, so it's like starts in winter and moves to like spring, summer, fall, all of that fun stuff. It's got a lot of different teachings, and it's absolutely amazing just to experience.
Awesome, thanks. Hopefully we'll actually get to open it up and meet there in person.
I hope so too.
So we have another comment for Tasha from Ainsley Monroe. She's asking, could you please tell us about your medallion? The beadwork is beautiful, and I've seen other Cree peoples wearing them.
Yeah, so this is a very special medallion. The image is of Josephine Ba Mondamin. So Josephine Ba Mondamin is the grandmother, the late grandmother, who walked around all of the Great Lakes in ceremony for the water, not just once, but like she had almost, I would say, close to 30,000 kilometers on her body. So it's beaded, and you can kind of see the echo of the star world, right? You can kind of see that echo in her hair and in her, in the beadwork, and there's a copper vessel. This was made for me special. It was made by my one of my nieces, my lodge nieces, and so she knew Josephine Ba was one of my teachers, and so she's the one who passed on that water ceremony to me. And she's the reason why I'm continuing to do the water walks. And so the medallions are very special. They often do tell a story, and so this is to remind me of her and of the legacy, the footprints that she left behind for us to follow. I walked with her for approximately 10 years. I don't have as many kilometers as her. I have about 7,000 kilometers, and so. Yeah, it's a very special piece of jewelry, and it's quite detailed, as you can see. You have to plan it out, and you have to plan out the colors, and so I feel very honored that it was made, and I'm able to wear it. So yeah, I'm very honored, and thank you for asking about it. Again, different nations have different reasons. Often the medallions do have some sort of special meaning for most people, I would say.
Thank you, Chinigwech. All right, okay, heading back into astronomy. We have someone asking for the name of the computer program we're using. And we also have Linda championing binocular viewing and asking for us to show a Messier object in the constellation of Cancer, Beehive M44. Kind of jumping around.
Nice. Yes, so we're using Stellarium. So you can find the program to download for free at stellarium.org. The link is in the description. And to find, let's see, I haven't used this program in a little bit, so I just need search window. Find the search. So what was the name again?
Beehive. And I think we found that it works better to do the name, or just M44 actually, that did. Oh, Beehive cluster, there it is. So this is something important to recognize. Like there's so much you can see with the naked eye, so much to learn and understand. And then even just picking up a pair of binoculars just increase the depth of your ability to see into the night sky. And there are a lot of things that you can find and see with binoculars. So you don't need to run out and get a telescope to start engaging with the night sky. Definitely just start looking now. Okay, back to you, Lucy.
Wonderful. So yes, we do have the Beehive cluster right here in our lovely night sky. So it is, if I make some of the lines show up right, in the Cancer zodiac sign.
And which direction are we looking now? If we just zoom out a little bit more.
We are looking west-southwest.
Southwest. And we've already learned Castor and Pollux in Gemini, just above Mars there. So once you've found those, the trick with binocular viewing is you really, need to look around for a while. You need to be steady. It helps to sit down in like a lawn chair or something like that, so you can kind of get yourself all set up, and then find some bright stars and kind of sort of trace over. And it does take some patience, but it's really worth it. When you find it, it's very fun.
Yes, my dad, for his trick with binoculars, is he has a tripod and he would attach it to the binoculars. He had a little adapter. But with that, it does make it a bit finicky for if you're trying to look through and you're trying to sit down while looking and then switching spot with someone else. It's very easy to hit the tripod. So it's something to be very careful about.
Okay, so we have Mike Mack asking, what are each of your favorite stars? And we also had a question from earlier that I didn't get to. Why is Venus the brightest planet?
Ooh, yes.
Venus
is not too far away from us comparatively compared to some of the other planets. It's relatively about the same size as the Earth, and it reflects a lot of light from the sun. So it looks really bright in the night sky, especially depending where it's at in the orbit. It can reflect quite a bit of light, so it'll look really bright. It's often the first object that you see in the evening if it happens to be setting after the sun, or the first or the last object you see before the sunrise if it's on that side of the sun, to see it in the morning instead.
And I've actually heard that that's part of why it's Aquayanang, or the woman's star, is that you do see it with the sunset for 9 months and then with the sunrise for 9 months. So it relates back. And it has that really thick carbon dioxide atmosphere. So Venus is also the hottest planet, even though it's not the closest one to the sun. It has a serious runaway greenhouse effect. So very thick, bright carbon dioxide atmosphere.
Yes, so the clouds are very light in color, hence it's reflecting a lot of light.
Yeah. All right. Let's see.
There was another question, another thing he had mentioned. What was it? There was two things I was going to answer, and I totally forgot what the second one was. Whoops.
Our favorite stars.
Right, the favorite stars.
Thank you, Sarah. Sarah, what's your favorite star?
Oh boy, I like my Alcor.
Ooh, yes.
In the Big Dipper.
Yes, we did see that last week. If we look towards the north, the second star right here from the tip of the handle, we've got Mizar and Alcor. And if you have a telescope or binoculars, you'll see that is it Mizar here? It's 2 stars. So there's a double star within what looks like a double star.
Insert Canadiana joke about the double-double. Another very good binocular object, right? If you're just starting out, that Big Dipper really stands out, that fissure. And so that's, yeah.
It's also a very good trick to see how good your eyesight is. If you can see the 2 stars, you have fairly good eyesight.
And Linda is letting us know that if you look at Mizar and Alcor, they are very lovely through binoculars, and you can also see that they're different colors. So stars are different colors, and that's kind of a neat thing to be able to see for yourself in the night sky.
Yes, very gorgeous to see. How about you, Aletha? Do you have a favorite star?
I think I like Antares.
Yes.
The not Mars.
Yes, I think that's one of my favorite too.
I like that it's reddish. I like that it's in Scorpio, even though I really pretend not to care about my zodiac sign. But I like Scorpio for different reasons, because in August you'll be pointing at the galactic center, and when I see that over Lake Huron in August, that's like one of my moments every year that I come back to. And it's like, okay, we're here again. This is beautiful. So.
Yes. Yeah, no, I also do really like Antares, Aries meaning not Mars, because people would mistake it for Mars being a reddish star in a zodiac sign.
You have to choose your own. You have to choose your own. You can't choose mine.
I know, right? When I was younger, I remember with my cousins, we were trying to just choose a star for our own, and I ended up choosing Arcturus before I knew what Arcturus was. So I think
What
that's
is
one of my favorites.
Arcturus?
Is as we saw just earlier, the star that if you arc from the Big Dipper, Arcturus is a bright star in Bootes, and I could just see it usually because during the summer around my birthday, I would go to Manitoulin Island, and over the lake, Mindamoya, when the sun would be setting, you can see Arcturus really, really well.
Awesome. Tasha, do you have a favorite star or object in the night sky?
Mine is, of course, Ojibwe, Anishinaabe, and Cree. It would be the hole in the sky. Yeah, Baganogijik. And so for us, again, that ties into the creation story and into how we come and leave the world. So that's one of my favorite, as is Bojo. The story of Bojo in the stars is also another one of my favorites, along with Mishibiju, of course.
Of course. Well, I'm just noticing that it is 7:45. So thank you everyone who came out and who asked questions and engaged. We super appreciate it. We love hanging out with you here on these Saturday evenings. And thank you so much, Tasha, for coming and answering all this star knowledge questions as a water worker.
Yeah.
Are there any last thoughts you'd like to share with us?
I just want to say, miigwech kananaskumtin to have the opportunity to share a little bit. Again, you know, I'm very much a beginner. There's so much knowledge that we have as Indigenous peoples across our respective nations, and you know, it's really important to respect that knowledge and to recognize it, that it has always existed and it still exists, and it is existing in parallel to that of non-Indigenous science and knowing. We have the equivalent, and so I'm really happy to have this opportunity to share a little bit with everybody. And I really encourage you to seek out those opportunities to learn, because we're open and inviting to people to learn about who we truly are as Indigenous nations. And it's a phenomenal journey for sure into our ways of knowing and thinking about the world. So thank you again, miigwech kananaskumtin. Always a pleasure to work with Science North. We've always had so much fun together. I can't wait for future partnerships as well.
Me neither. I'm looking forward to this summer. So the link to the Junction Creek Water Walk link tree will be in the description. And if you want to learn more or get involved in protecting the water, check that out.
Yeah, there's COVID safe ways to do so. So we encourage people to come and listen to our Zoom talks. If you have extra, you can always donate. We are grassroots. We don't receive any kind of funding, so we're always looking for funding, and we use that to generate some of the knowledge sharing across our platforms. So
absolutely.
And
if you enjoyed this content, definitely give us a like and a follow for more. Next week, Saturday, May 15th, is International Astronomy Day, and we're going to be talking all about Canada's role in our return to the moon in just 3 years.
Wow.
So an exciting topic, yes. So thank you. Merci, miigwech. Keep looking up.